welcome. My name is Nicole Rowe. I am the owner of Sunrow Solutions. At Sunrow Solutions, we focus with different EPCs, sales organizations, and then also work with different products such as Scanifly, really focused on sales operations on the front end. Now we have a great panelist today that's going to really dive into why sales should really care about operations. So I'm going to introduce the panel. First, we have Brad.
Hi, Nicole. My name's Brad Montgomery. I work at Aveyo Solar. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Procurement. My background was started as an installer, working with Vivint and then Solar City, and then kind of got into the operations side. I came about on it with Aveyo Solar when we transitioned from a sales-only company to an installation company. And one of our main focuses in that was to really do it better. That's one of our main core values. And so our entire company is just built around the idea of doing it better for the customer, the sales rep, and then our internal employees.
No, awesome. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Dylan.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Dylan Chico. I work with Aveyo. I've been with them for quite some time now. I originally started in sales with solar industry for residential. Before that, I have 20 years working with power companies, building power plants, different forms of power generation, steam, solar, wind turbines. My thing is, since I've been in solar, is I realized that something that was lacking for the sales groups were proper training and understanding for expectations. And that's something I've been pushing very hard, and we've done. I feel a pretty good job at that here at Aveyo, and hopefully we'll be able to give you guys some information.
Awesome. Thank you. Chris?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're on the country. Chris Murray, CEO and CFO of TriSMART Solar. Predominant background, started in the finance world, used kind of the prowess and the metric-driven kind of mentality that I had from finance to move into the operations side of the business. I've been doing operations for about 10 years, at least in the solar space. And over the last 2 years, I've really put another emphasis back into the finance world and combining in both roles of CFO and COO. So excited about that, and excited to kind of share some of the best practices and things that will create collaboration between sales and operations.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So let's dive into the first question. So Brad, especially with Empower coming from sales org over to now the full EPC, what would you say in your business day to day? Have you seen the most have sales been affecting operations? And what are some of those best practices that you've implemented in your business?
Yeah, great question, Nicole. I think a lot of what we see, I mean, obviously the sale is the initial, kind of origination. That's where the project gets started. And so there's a lot of expectations or promises that are kind of made at that time, whether from the consumer's understanding or kind of what the sales rep has said. And so we've just really found that the closer we can have that alignment with the sales group at that starting point, and them understanding what we need to process that deal, what we need to make that deal go smoother. It just kind of makes that starting point a little easier for everybody, and then it's easier to keep that project kind of on track throughout the process. There's always things that come up. It's construction, so kind of having that alignment from the beginning, we've noticed has allowed for sometimes when those hiccups happen, there's just a little bit better understanding with all parties involved, whether it's the customer, the sales rep, or us. And so for us, we've really tried to let our sales partners know what we need up front to process those deals, what makes it easy, and then those things that can kind of really hang the deal up if we don't have. And so just really starting off on the right foot, and just it prevents us from having to kind of come from behind in a sense on a lot of these projects.
No, for sure. And I always tell everybody, solar, it's still a construction industry and a construction project, that there's always something that can come up. It's really all about the execution that you provide when those issues do arise. So I think that's so key. Now, Dylan, I know at Aveyo you've implemented a very robust audit process to make sure that they have those clean deals. Can you kind of go into what are some of those best practices that you've seen there?
Well, I guess it depends how you look at it, right? When I first started in solar, I kind of joke about it because a lot of the things that we were taught were you don't need to know anything. All you need to do is go into the customer's house, tell them that they're going to get a check for a tax credit, and all these things that are incorrect, as far as like what's really happening. So as I transitioned from that into operations, we started to try to implement things. First is training, as many trainings for sales reps as possible, get them to understand exactly what's happening, and be truthful. You know, I think that that's where a lot of people within the industry kind of deviate, is they kind of tell the half truths of what's happening, and they don't want your customer to know that anything's going to ever go wrong. So for as far as auditing stuff goes, we've tried to put some stuff in place to do double, triple checks as far as whether it's measuring by hand on top of doing drone photos, whatever that may be. We've went as far as I mean, we work directly with a lot of our sales reps to do some of our site surveys, you know, so they get that kind of better training. As far as best practices, I mean, I guess that's kind of a tough one when you think about what's going to drive the sales rep, right? They're mostly money motivated. So in order to kind of create some of those things, or you almost have to create a pain point for a sales rep so that they kind of follow in line sometimes, right? Luckily with us, we have some really good sales guys that we work with here at Aveyo, and so it's not that big, but that's something that I've seen in the industry as a whole, is you almost have to create those pain points to drive them, and help them understand. So one of the trainings that I've done for sales reps is explaining, when you have a group of jobs, if you look at your jobs as some of these jobs that you know are just going to slow your jobs down. I consider those like when you have a person that has low realization, and you know you look at this, say they have a 40% realization. Those 60%, all that's doing is that's muddying up the water, and it's slowing you down. It's making your jobs slower to install, slower to PTO, slower to getting paid. And so if they can kind of help train their groups, that understanding that the better they do as far as putting in only jobs that they know they're going to install, they know that they have a good roof to work with. They know they've already talked to the customer about electrical upgrades because we've trained them on what to look for when they're looking at a panel, learn how to calculate backfeed so they're not running into issues as far as that goes when their system size is too large for the existing electrical, and not have those conversations. So I think personally, like the more you train them and explain to them what that looks like, and you get better jobs on the plate to begin with, you're going to slow down their jobs less, means you're going to get them money quicker. I mean, I think that's kind of goes hand in hand. If they can understand that they're kind of hurting and slowing themselves down, that they kind of creates that self-moderating, I guess. The right word would be.
Yeah, and I think it goes to show that it's always that, obviously we all want to get that surplus of deals, but it's that quality behind it. And we know that those quality deals, those are ones that are going to really result in that positive customer experience, and obviously a ton of referrals. Chris, what has TriSMART done here, and some of the best practices that you've learned?
Yeah, I think you know, I guess I want to start this off by saying, you know, I think there is an inherent kind of um, combativeness between operations and sales, right? That exists, right? You know, operations is consistently slowing me down and slowing my money down, and operations is saying, well, if you would just do all of these things, right, we could do things faster, right? So I think one of the first thing is just the mindset or the approach that kind of a business takes, that one without the other means nothing, right? You can't have operations without sales, sales without operations, and the more that you can kind of push that into your organization as just a modality and a way of being, I think first and foremost, I think that makes a huge difference in how people approach these things. So I think morale and kind of approach is a huge thing, right? From an operational perspective, operations has an end goal of collecting as much information as humanly possible so that they can set themselves up powerfully to be able to process the job as quickly as possible, right? That's where you run into kind of the first convergence, right? Sales reps, they've already spent 2 or 3 hours in the home. They want to basically get out, right? So they want to get in and get out, right? So what we've really focused on at TriSMART is how do we create like an ease of transaction? How do we get what we want while providing the least amount of effort from a sales rep perspective? So this year we've moved to a fully digitized welcome call where we can collect a lot of information through that digital welcome call, right? And all of that is then transposed and then automatically uploaded into our CRM. So a lot of the verbal communication that was potentially happening at the home or in the home is now documented, digitized, and put into our CRM, right? So that will be step number one. I think another best practice is really equating and putting yourself in the, you know, from an operational perspective, putting yourself in the shoes of a sales rep, right? What are predominantly sales reps focused on? I think Dylan kind of touched on it. They want to get their money as quickly as possible, right? So we're very data driven here. And so what we constantly put in front of sales reps is, all right, here's your, your last, 30 deals, right? And we have what's called a perfect packet, right? For the deals that you provided a perfect packet on, here is the average duration to install, or really equating it to, here is your speed to your cash, right? Here's what happens in the duration and your speed to cash when you don't provide a perfect packet, right? And in doing so, it really incentivizes people that, okay, if I would have done X, then potentially I could have sped my cash up by 10 to 14 days, right? Lastly, kind of we focus again through data, like what has driven not perfect packets. So what is consistently a theme with either a sales rep, a dealer, maybe a region where particularly there is an issue that, hey, we haven't been able to consistently get said thing. We then kind of alert and inform kind of our account managers, who will then set up a training depending on where the issue lies with, hey, did you know that one, there is an issue here, right? So just informing the reps, sometimes they didn't even know, or the dealer or management, that they didn't even know this was an issue. Two, potentially explaining what it would look like for success, right? And then three, explaining to them the impact of what has happened thus far and what it has caused, and potentially, if correcting, what it will enable, right? So I think, in summary, really kind of being data driven, creating and gathering as much information, but making it easy on the sales rep, and then providing consistent feedback through data that shows them the impact of the decisions that they make. So predominantly, those are kind of I guess at a high level, the three things that we're predominantly focused on. And as a result, we've seen an uptick in what we call perfect packet or clean deals.
That's awesome. No, I always love to explain to reps and see the huge value in it of always explaining the why we have the welcome call, because it's going to be a protection on the customer, the EPC, and also the sales group, and then why you need to have things that you do, because in result, it is going to help speed up those timelines. So next question, obviously after this year and really how volatile the industry is, if a sales rep is looking for a new installer, what is the top thing you would share with them to really help them make the decision to choose the right group? Brad, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. Obviously, we've seen a lot of turmoil in our industry over the last couple of years. I think the biggest thing I would be looking for if I was a sales dealer is what is that installation company's long-term goal? There's been a lot of companies that have been around that have, kind of touted speed to install and kind of cut corners and things like that, and it's kind of muddied the water. So I would be looking for what that company is really, what their goal is to be as a company. It's especially for us, it's not kind of a short-term thing. It's not a way to just bring in as much money as we can and to try and transact, but it's really to provide an experience to that customer to be here long-term, to serve the communities that we work in. And so I think just making sure that your goal aligns with whoever you're working with.
So, Dylan?
So I think back a couple years, right? And me coming in, I've never been in sales prior to solar. My background was so different. So coming into this and seeing something that kind of threw me right out the gate was the idea of a blitz model and what that does to an installer. Understanding, how volume can be detrimental as well as good for an installer. If you send somebody, 100 sales when they're capable healthily to install 50, you're actually going to put them outside their timelines and kind of create some structural error or issues within the organization sometimes. And I've seen it happen where, people sold so many deals in California during NEM3 that they actually put them out of business, right? Like it got so bad that they could not meet the demand that was required. So what I would say is understand how you can help your installer as far as selling in areas where they need more volume and help them to grow in those areas, as well as understand what they can't do in some of the areas that you may be sending too much volume, and kind of creating extended timelines and understand how that works. I mean, we've grown a little bit in the East Coast this year, and I'll give an example of what happened was reps not understanding the way moving into a new AHJ requires business licenses. You have to do this kind of song and dance with them and figure out the new process for each AHJ when you're moving into a new state. And so right when they started getting the hang of things, they thought it was taking too long, so they moved into a new place. And so it's like you actually just increase your timelines again because not understanding that. So I would just say get to know your installer, how do I explain that? Communicate more with your ops teams to see how you can better help them and not make things worse and I don't know, move together, I guess. Work together as a more of an organism instead of two separate individuals.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think any type of strategic planning is always key. And then if it is a blitz model, focus on the areas that you know are going to be best and do that planning with your installer so you know that they're going to be fully prepared. Chris?
Yeah, again, I think really successful sales organization and EPC kind of relationships. Um, the best of them are partnerships, right? So, what is it that your partner can count on you for, and what can I count on you for, right? So, really understanding and laying the groundwork for kind of this is what you can expect from me. This is what you can't expect from me, right? Being clear up front. I think up to this point, predominantly a lot of at least the sales organizations in the industry have chased really kind of the red line, red line, chase to the bottom, race to the bottom, right? I think that potentially, or has, in plenty of examples, has created a massive problem because it's like I'm potentially saving money now or making more money now, and depending on which side of the coin you're on, to only lead to kind of very near and real time kind of issues, right? When that company goes out of business, right? Would you have rather paid that extra $1,000 or $2,000 on that deal to not deal with, maybe 30 or 40 customers calling you and trying to figure out what are we going to do to fix this and how are we going to resolve that, right? So, I think really, and how do you know that from a sales organization or dealer perspective? What is a EPC company or an operations kind of entity? What are they promising or putting their name behind, right? Are they putting a 25-year workmanship? Are they putting any production guarantee? Are they putting their money where their mouth is as it relates to the long-term promise to not only you, the sales rep, but the customer, right? So are you willing to pay a little bit more to know that you're not going to have to deal with these issues for the next 25 years? I mean, if you ask me, I would say yes. Right. So I think again, where are they putting their values? And where are they putting that on paper? Where can you see that? Right. A lot of people vocally promise, I'm going to give you the best experience. Okay, great. Where can I see that in your contract? Where can I see that in your warranties? Right. So I think that's a huge thing. I think second is the financial performance of the company. If I was any medium or even anyone who was concerned about kind of the longevity of a relationship, I would definitely want to know how are you financially responsible? What are the financials that you currently have set up? And are you financially stable enough to be able to provide what it is you're saying you're providing for an extended period of time? Right. So I think that's important. And then I think three in that partnership model is what are they initially offering and what kind of collaboration is an operation company offering to you? Hey, I'm going to tell you where to sell, how to sell, best practices and how to sell in this kind of market. Are they sharing that information? If they are, then you could probably suspect that they do care about your success, right? Because their success in the sales organization success is also really the operational success. So again, to kind of summarize this, where are they putting their money? Are they putting their money where their mouth is? And what are they kind of willing to put on paper as it relates to promises to the sales organization? Are they financially responsible, financially capable of fulfilling on kind of what you're set out to do? Um, and then three, really, what kind of collaboration are they willing to offer you, or how are they enabling you to be kind of the best dealer or the best sales practice kind of organization in the markets that you operate, right? So, at least for me, those would be the kind of the top three things that I would be looking out for if I was a sales dealer.
No, for sure. And I think that partnership aspect is huge. And especially, I think we've all kind of touched on that. It's the data and the transparency are always huge. And just finding that installer that is going to really like assist you along the way to make sure that they are pointing you in the right direction and being that true partner. So next question. So as we think about going into the next year and a lot of just evolution coming in the marketplace, how do you think operations is going to be more fused into the pre-sales process? For example, impact on different compliance coming with door-to-door sales, the option for sales reps to actually lead site surveys, and then also more groups actually pivoting to direct-to-consumer model. Brad, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. I mean, I think it's been interesting. I've been in the industry about 12 years now, and I've seen the models kind of change and come and go. And we've gotten to an interesting point where the sales rep has a lot of kind of control and direction over the project. And I think moving forward, there's going to be a lot more kind of closer alignment at the initial point of sale, especially here in California. NEM 3 has really changed the sale process, and then not only that, but how the consumer is using their electricity when they're using it. It has a much greater impact on the outcome of the system, and overall their payment and what the deal looks like. And so I think that as we move forward and we start to lose net metering in a lot of other states and things like that, that there will be a closer alignment, with ops having to be closer involved to make sure that what gets sold initially can actually be installed, but it also meets the customer expectations. Batteries have become a huge piece of the system component in California over the last couple of years, and there's still just a misunderstanding of what, on both sides, from both sales and the customer, and even on some of the operations, as what the battery can do, when it can do it, what the best scenario is for the customer. But a lot of that still is based on when that customer is using energy. And if the sales rep doesn't understand that, even the customer, that system can, especially in the time we're now, it can hurt that customer. Whereas as previous, it's, there wasn't a lot of bad that can come from it. You maybe weren't saving as much as you thought, but with the kind of place that we're in now, that the impact that it has on when that customer is using energy, it can really change the economics of the system. And so just having that closer alignment from the point of sale, I think the finance companies are still driving a lot of this with the proposal tools and the system requirements, and what's in tolerance and what's not. But I just think that as it becomes more of a custom solution to each customer, there just has to be a closer alignment to make sure that everybody's getting what they need and what they expect.
Yeah, I agree that just customer expectations up front is always has to be that priority.
Yeah.
Dylan.
This is an interesting one. We're dealing with this very heavily right now. You talk about the batteries and stuff. Illinois is one of our larger markets, and they're losing their NEM this year, or however you want to speak about that. They're becoming a battery market next year. So I've actually had lots of conversations with a lot of our reps about that and what that looks like, how to understand the difference between a yearly true up, annual true up versus what we're going to be looking at now, and some of the different changing to a different utility plan, a rate plan. Illinois is showing a day before, where they'll let you know what the rates are going to be the day before. So like if you can kind of pick some different things and see what that look like. I think that it's going to be very interesting on how we move forward. I've always been very much a proponent of the rep should know as much as possible, and that's how you're going to deliver the best experience. There's no other construction industry that I've ever worked in where your salesman would go in and not be able to quote the job, so to speak, very accurately, right? Like so I think it's going to be interesting here this next year. I'm happy that we do have quite a few sales reps who are already involved in site surveys. We actually have a group in Illinois that does site surveys using Scanifly. As well as we have a team in California that we're going to start doing a proposal based around a site survey, so that they're trained, the sales reps are trained with everything that a site survey tech would be doing at that point. So I believe that there's a lot to be learned there, and that they'll be able to deliver a much better experience. And yeah, I think there's a lot of growth that can happen, and I think our industry, that's how we're going to get stronger, as far as the better experience. We look at in California right now, and I'm kind of scared of what's going to happen this year with all these customers getting their first year of NEM 3. It's like I've seen systems where they got 12 kilowatts with 5 kilowatt battery, and you just know that customer is not going to have a good experience. So looking at systems a little bit different, maybe 100% offset might not be what's best in some of these markets with the battery, right? Like you're only eliminating their daytime use or whatever it'll be to give them what actually works best for them. So yeah, I think that's going to be very important as a whole.
Awesome. Now, with the rolling out in Illinois of sales reps actually leading site surveys, especially with drone technology, did you see that it actually helped cut off some of that timelines for you?
For us, the biggest thing was we sell a lot of rural areas. And so when you're dealing with some of the proposal softwares, what they're using, not everywhere has near maps, not everywhere has Eagle View. So you kind of get some really obscure measurements, panels on places that they just can't go, right? So it's like we use a few different PPA companies that provide their own proposal in a sense, I guess, through a third-party proposal company. And when you look at what they tell you can be installed versus what could actually be installed, sometimes they're very far from each other. So having that drone on site and being able to get accurate measurements and know that the system will be able to be installed, it's helped us with we'd show a day of install and stuff would just not fit based off of what was originally sold. So yeah, that's a big fix, I guess, for us in those rural markets.
Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take a step back even before Brad and Dylan, and I think it really starts with just aligning the interest of both sales rep, homeowner, and EPC company, right? For so long, a lot of I'll say the subconscious incentives for sales reps or financiers or lack thereof for homeowners has created a marketplace of kind of, I'll say, one-sided kind of outcomes, right? And I think the more that we continue to align policy, procedure, technology, financing to ensure that all of those interests are aligned, right? I think that sales rep is going to take a second look potentially at, I mean, is this actually going to fit? Is this not going to fit? Because potentially I want to know and make sure that this deal aligns with just kind of what I'm trying to accomplish, right? So I think that with certain financiers rolling out and creating platforms that cap certain price per watts or certain kind of kilowatt hour rates that can be offered. Sales reps are really doing their diligence there now beforehand to make sure, is this a viable customer, right? Am I going to be able to save this customer money? Am I going to be able to do kind of the things that I know should be done or could be done for these people? And if not, then I'm not going to go sell them a $9 a watt system, right? And I think that the checks and balances that are now being put in place create kind of alignment, right? So even going back to the technology, I forget the name of it that's being rolled out. Really, that's kind of a background check for sales reps that will transcend and move across, multiple financiers, multiple EPCs. I can't remember the technology name, but it is being put out there that really kind of there will be a background of each of the individual sales reps. So that will remove bad actors from, potentially being caught in certain places and moving to a different finance or different company, different state. So I think there will be more kind of procedural things that will be put in place to kind of remove some of the kind of bad practices and bad actors. I think also technology will play a huge part, right? Like here at TriSMART, we really believe firmly in setting people up powerfully for what they're good at, right? So we don't require sales reps to do site assessments because we really want our dealers and our sales reps to focus on what they're good at. That's selling, right? How do I use technology? How do I use certain practices that will enable them to sell as best as possible, but now also get the information that's needed, predominantly through technology sources, right? So, I think a lot of those changes up front with just realigning kind of the interest of all parties up front. I think the direct to consumer platform, I think there are certain I will say financiers that have been created in the last few months, and I see line of sight to quite a few more, where they will create this relationship with the homeowners that potentially could cut out the sales rep, right? And I think that will apply more pressure for sales reps to do the right thing in the right places because now there is a competition in the market that didn't exist, right? So I think a man smarter than me once said, markets are efficient, right? They will always find a way to kind of weed out kind of bad practices or bad investments, right? So I think with additional kind of pressure, additional competition, and also kind of alignment from the different parties on the front end, I think that we will see a cleaning up of the industry, and I think technology will be at the forefront of enabling that and enabling people to do what they do best, which is potentially sell, construct, so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that software that you're referring to, I think is Recheck.
There you go.
Um, yep. And I think it does tie into a lot of things that the RSA, the Residential Solar Association, is really standing for. And really just coming together as all different companies on aligning on what should be those best sales practices. So anyone, I encourage you to also look into the RSA. It's a great organization that's really focusing on a lot of what we're talking about today. Just a reminder, we do have the Q&A that's open, so we will reserve the last few minutes to go through some additional questions, so feel free to use that. But next question for the team is, obviously we already talked about how solar, it's still a construction industry, and there's always going to be some unexpected delays that can pop up. What advice would you give to sales reps on how to handle that with the customer and make sure that they're still maintaining that trust and that relationship with that customer? Brad?
Yeah, great question, Nicole. I think we've kind of hit on it earlier, but it's just making sure that that customer is aware of what they're going to be getting and that that expectation can kind of be met. Um, we've talked about it, it is construction, things will come up. But I think that closer alignment that we have, it allows for sometimes those hiccups that do occur to kind of be smoothed out. Um, I would never promise a perfect system or a perfect experience. It kind of seems that when you hit those snags, that project for whatever reason seems to hit multiple snags. And so I would just, I think on the operations side, our goal is to always respond to those as quickly and as actively as we can, just to make sure that yes, stuff will come up, but when it does, we're aware of it and we're as quick as we can to correct it and get that project back on the right track and moving forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually met with a sales partner yesterday and it came up where they were looking at reviews. And they said, I don't look at just the 5-star reviews. I also look at the 1-star reviews and I see how quick you actually respond. So I think it just goes to show just how quick that response rate is, that when something does go wrong, you are following through immediately is key.
Yeah.
Dylan?
When I was selling, I used to make jokes with a customer and I'd ask them, have you ever had a contractor to your house? Have you ever done a remodel or had a fence done? And a lot of times they would, yeah, we have. It was a terrible experience. And I said, well, that's has a lot to do with you're in any construction industry, and that's probably how it's going to go with one of our when you go solar. I said there's a very good chance that you're not going to be happy, that they may be late. What was it that upset you? Oh, they didn't show up on time, or whatever that may be, and talk them through what that looks like and what the construction industry as a whole has, right? I mean, you don't have lawyers and doctors showing up to put solar on your house. Like, that's not who's in this industry. And talk through them. And I never really had too many pissed off customers when they would say, hey, you know what? The install guys were 10 minutes late today. They would call and say, you know what? You're right. They showed up late, but everything's on path. Everything's fine. And talk them through that ahead of time, what that looks like. I think the better you set the expectation on the front end with how a job's going to go, the better experience that customer is going to get. Where we would literally talk about, if a roof leaks happen, we have a 24-hour response time. We're going to be out there right away. Like, if that does happen, don't worry, we got you taken care of. You're really buying the sales rep, not really the installer. The rep they get could make or break the same installer, right? Like, I've sold for 4 or 5 different large companies, some of which are no longer in business anymore, and they could have terrible 1-star reviews, and right next to it we have 5-star reviews, and typically the differentiate factor is the rep itself, and how that rep explained that process and what that customer is expecting to get out of that process. So I would just say, be as honest and upfront as possible, and you're probably going to deliver the best experience that customer's going to get.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, for me, it's just it boils down to 2 things. It's communication and doing what you say you're going to do, right? So, yeah, I think communication is key, right? One, setting the expectations up front, right? I think often and proactive communication normally will prevent a blow up potentially when you make mistakes. So the more often you can communicate what's going on, what's the status, what's next, what you can expect, I think the more comfortable people are, right? And as issues arise and as issues the one thing that you wanna really understand from them is, what's the impact to you? How can I make this right? Right. So one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is we do not tout that we are perfect. what we do tout is that we will address your issue and we will make right whatever wrongs we have done, right? So I think if you can be proactive in your communication about what's going on and what to expect, and when things go awry, again, being proactive, letting the customer know before they call in to complain, hey, I want you to know that there was a mistake made. Someone did go through your ceiling today. Hey, whatever did happen. And the more that you can be on the proactive front and letting them know, one, what's going on, and then two, what you're going to do to remedy said issue, I think that will go over 10 times, better, right? So I think that is the predominant focus that we've taken. And we've been able to, and we've seen that in doing so, we turned a lot of 1-star reviews back into 5, right? Because in the mistakes that you make, there's just another opportunity for you to show who you are as a company by saying, yeah, I made a mistake and I made it right, and here's what I did, right? So I think, again, it just boils down to communication and then what you do to make it right for the customer or sales rep.
Nope, agree. Now, next question. Are there any other practical tips that you can offer to a sales rep that can really be effective for them to reduce any type of change orders that happen after site survey? Brad?
Yeah, I mean, I think uh, we've kind of touched on it, but just really understanding what the equipment can do, what it can't do, and then also what the customer's needs are. A lot of the change orders that we see come from either some type of equipment change that was potentially selected incorrectly, or maybe there was just a misunderstanding on the quantity or things like that. And then it's probably system size changes are what we see after that. And so again, just making sure that we're meeting the customer's needs from the time of sale, really talking through with the customer, understanding when they're using that power, and ultimately what they're kind of looking for. I think those are probably the two biggest.
Dylan?
Um, for me, I mean, I always go back to the understanding, because for me, I think that was my turning point in the whole where my sales really picked up, I guess, when I was in the sales side. It was being able to talk to the customer and know ahead of time, right out the gate. I used to compete with some of the larger sales companies, and they would a lot of what do you call that? Sell a site survey, right? They'd say, oh, we don't know if we can get you solar net. We don't know if your electrical is going to be good. We don't know if you need a roof. We don't. And I would tell them at the table, I can tell you right now, let's go look at your panel. And I break it down, explain to them what system size they were getting, based off what panel we weren't going to need to upgrade, or we would need a D-rate. And I went through all that for myself. And that may sound crazy to some, but for me, it really helped me close a lot of deals. So I'm always a huge proponent of the technical training on the sales rep side. The more you know, that's your customer. I never let the installer for me at that time kind of dictate what was going to happen. I like to take control, because to me, it's my customer. It's always going to be my customer. I still have customers from installers that have gone out of business that I still help them get warranties. We had a couple inverters crash to from an installer that went out of business last year, and I helped them get an RMA and walk them through that process, and still continue to warranty them, because at the end of the day, that is my customer. So I always encourage sales reps to think of it that way. We are a partner as an installer with you, but at the end of the day, it's your customer, and the more you do to provide a good experience, the better off that relationship's going to be, and you're going to continue to get referrals. Like I continue to get referrals from those customers that are of installers that are no longer in business. So I just really encourage people to take that extra step and treat it as such. Don't put the blame on someone else for something that you could have done.
Yeah, I agree. It's always that you make it that educational based sale and that relationship based sale, and that's just going to continue in the long run. Chris?
The question once more, please, Nicole.
Um, so what do you recommend for, no, we did that one. Hold on. Best practical tips that you can implement today for helping sales reps reduce the amount of change orders up front.
Yes. Thank you. The one thing that I guess I really highly encourage sales reps, and I think it will streamline the process from basically sale onward, is trying to understand what the customer is solving for, right? What are they trying to accomplish by going solar, right? And then bestly, doing their best as a sales rep, using the knowledge that you have potentially, and or relying on the knowledge that you may need and support from your installer, is how do I best accomplish that goal, right? And I think if we consistently keep that in the front of our mind and work together to create a solution, right? Installer, sales rep, to create a solution to enable that. I think a lot of the time those projects tend to go a lot better than, hey, I'm going to sell them solar. And then, you know what, maybe we're going to talk about batteries in a week or two. Inherently, what happens, at least in our process, a lot of the time when we go to review the design with the customer, they're like, well, hey, where's that battery that maybe we were talking about, right? So really kind of really fully understanding kind of what they're looking for, aligning those interests again, and then making sure that when you leave the house that you're kind of recapping, you know, you can expect this and it will get this, and then working with your or operational organization to ensure that they are able to fulfill on kind of what is promised, right? So that's another reason that we kind of really digitize, again, the welcome call. We go over, hey, what are you expecting? Was there anything that was covered or needed that is not on the contract that you're expecting, right? Right. So we really spend a fair amount of time, not only with the sales rep, but with the homeowner, truly understanding what is it that they are, you know, wanting to get out of this whole process. And then we do our job to, one, be in communication. If currently what you are expecting is not currently what you are, you know, what is scheduled to happen, or potentially just reaffirming that, hey guys, yes, what you're looking for, the solution that we have provided will do that, and as a result, you can expect these things, right? And then we also love to really kind of leave a place before, during, and after that, potentially if those if something changes, that, hey, I want to change kind of what I was expecting, I want to modify what I was doing, or, you know, and actually in doing more research, I now actually want this. Really giving people and customers a path, and or sales reps a path or a place to be able to immediately get, you know, responses on, well, how would I now modify this to now accomplish my new goal, right? So again, I really think it comes down to aligning kind of what they're looking for and how can I best accomplish that. And then again, communicating as those things potentially change one way or another from either party throughout the process. And that normally will drive down change orders, right?
Yep. No, I agree. And I think a big part too is when you're looking at an installer, you want to look at their technology stack. You want to see what front end tool are they using, what proposal tool, what's that ease of use, and just how easy they can make it for the rep. That can really help eliminate some of those things that could happen and prevent those change orders. Now, we did have a good question that just came in from Alex. So, what are some of the best resources that you're aware of that we can provide to entry-level sales reps to help them learn as much as possible about operations and installation side of the business so they can help and manage their projects better from the start? Brad?
Yeah, great question. I think some of it is meeting specifically with your installation partner and understanding their specific steps. I mean, a lot of what I deal with is dealing with our manufacturers and the partners that we work with on the equipment side. And every time I talk with one of them, they are all willing to talk with the sales guys. They want to offer training, and it's something I don't think it's utilized as much. It's kind of funny anytime I talk with some of our sales guys and I say, hey, like, do you want to talk with so and so, and it's just, it kind of gets pushed to the side. And so I think it's really taking advantage of the resources that are out there from the manufacturers. They have a lot of training, not only on websites and online and things like that, but the individual sales reps will come out, they'll meet with you, they'll talk about the process. A lot of them have done sales in the past, and so they can really they kind of see both sides. They've been at the table with the customer, but they also really understand how the equipment works and how you can kind of get through some of those talking points. And so I would really recommend just understanding your installer and their specific process, and then B, the equipment that you work with. They all have tons of resources out there that they are sometimes begging to give to people.
No, I agree. I think that's a key point. There's a ton of just knowledge out there, and it's just making sure you're getting it in front of the reps, and they always do want to learn and always just know more so they can just continue to educate their customers better. Yeah. Dylan?
I'm gonna agree with Brad on this one. I actually took a lot of the in-phase and lighten stuff before even getting into the operations side of solar itself. Took all those free trainings, did a lot of the stuff with Solar Edge, the free trainings that they offer out there. I actually had to push to get access to some of that at the time. This is probably about 5 years ago, to get myself access to that. But it is there. You might as well go look at it. The more you understand, I feel like the better you do as selling. Sometimes I guess if you can get too deep in the weeds, you don't need to get too technical with a customer, but it definitely helps you put the pieces together.
Chris?
Yeah, I won't, I do align. I think, with what they're saying, a lot of the installers, including here at our organization, we provide kind of a solar 101, right? So kind of just how does solar work? What are the broad steps that exist, right? And then, kind of how do we navigate those? So I think that's important. I do think that you're right, manufacturers and things of that nature. I will say that some of the best sales reps that I've seen have actually taken the time to go get kind of NABSAB. There's basically a technical sales training that you can actually get. And some of the best sales rep I've seen is they actually understand a lot of the technical side. Probably wouldn't say maybe as well as maybe an installer, but there is some NABSAB information that if you think that you're going to be in this industry for a while, I think they offer a ton of resources there, especially on the sales side. Surprisingly, SIA, they're getting into the residential space as well, but they offered, I think, different workshops and things of that nature that allow you to maybe meet up and network with other sales reps. And I think a lot of knowledge right now is passed on through just kind of interaction with other sales reps. So I think really leveraging kind of different networking groups, RSA, SIA, things of that nature to kind of talk about best practices. I think tangibly, NABSAB provides quite a bit of information in the technical sales world. And I think finally, utilize your manufacturers and your installers, because a lot of the time they have kind of a prerequisite kind of solar 101 kind of platform that would allow you to then at least just get them off the ground, right? And then replicating that within your kind of own sales organization.
Oh, perfect. And I think also some sort of mentorship program where you have a lot of those seasoned reps that are really willing to work with those newer reps that are really eager to learn and really share that knowledge and expertise also really helps just kind of get that best practices out there. So one last question before we close. So we've heard drones mentioned a few times today. How are you using drones and different technology that you've implemented in your business to really help that front end of that sales process and really just help with that speed to install? Brad?
Yeah, great question. I mean, for us, the drone has been a somewhat new solution over the past few years. Um, and it's really the one thing that we've gone back and forth with doing rep surveys and things like that, and it was tough to kind of collect all the information. And so the drone kind of gave us a really good middle point. There's instances where the homeowner's not there, we can't always get into the house. And so being able to go out, fly the drone potentially when the customer is not there, it gives us a lot of that information really, really quickly. And so for us, it not only sped up the survey time, but it reduced the amount of time that we were on site, which then opens the calendar to then add additional surveys. And so that was probably the main increase in speed that we've seen is just opening up our survey calendar and kind of creating more availability. For our design side, Scanifly has been a great tool for us. Our design team utilizes a lot of the platform inside Scanifly to place modules and to essentially cut out an additional step that we used to take previously. We would take Scanifly in, import that, use a different design software to kind of essentially get a layout for that customer. And we started to do that all within Scanifly's tool. And so it's saved us time not only in the field surveying, but also on the back end on our actual design and configuration of the system.
Very cool. On average, how many days would you say that it's really taken off of your timelines with implementing that?
Yeah, I mean, it saves us probably 20 or 30 minutes per design as far as our guys going through it, which adds maybe one or two designs to them per day. And then the site survey calendar, I think it changes based on, kind of the seasonality, but it's allowed us to really, I mean, some of our surveyors are doing 2 or 3 times the amount of appointments that they were doing previous. And so it's just allowed us to do a lot more with less and just to really have more availability. A lot of our surveys, when they're getting scheduled at time of sale, we're able to put them on within 24 or 48 hours. It's normally pretty rare that we're going beyond that. And I know that's always been a really big focus of ours is to make sure that we can when the sales reps calling in, that we can not only provide a date, but provide a date that's reasonably close, hopefully within that 24 to 48 hours.
No, that's awesome too, especially something like that to save on not only time, but also the economic piece as
Yeah.
well. Dylan, what about you?
For us, we have a large sales group in Pennsylvania, and one of the pain points we had was 2 and 3 story homes. So we get that in Illinois as well. But one of the big things for us where the drone came in place is when you got to get up on a roof and measure it, and it's 2 or 3 story house, takes you a lot longer, right? And so like when you can knock that out in 30 minutes instead of 2 hours or whatever that may take in order for them to get up and actually map that whole system out on a roof, as well as even having the people that want to do it, right? So like we actually went through a little bit of a painful period where we couldn't get some surveys done in that market because we couldn't get any. We were trying to hire people. We couldn't even get anybody that want to get on a 3 story roof. So having that drone, it definitely helped. As well as we have our own in-house design team as well, and so by utilizing DXF files directly that are accurate with the drone right out the gate and building our CAD from that. I think right now we're down to about 15 minutes of plan set with our templates and pulling DXF to create those plan sets. So I mean, if we're doing, I want to say we were doing 35 a day with excuse me, versus 15 a day prior to using the drone. Yeah, I think that's where we're at right now. 35 a day versus 15 a day per person. So it's a big difference.
Wow, that's a huge difference. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been utilizing drone technology for about 4 years now. We've used 3 different kind of major platforms. Lastly, and currently with Scanifly, right? One of the things that we've done also as a test is we're also measuring accuracy, right? So a lot of the time, what we're doing is we're benchmarking candidly the drone companies against each other, right? So who has the most accurate platform? And so thus far, we found, and the reason that we are with Scanifly is thus far when benchmarking against the other competitors, Scanifly has been the most accurate. One of the things that we really also are consistently doing is how do we get better, right? So in flying kind of the drone, of course, it has increased throughput and reduced cost for sure. And it has enabled kind of our template on the design side to be much more efficient. But we're also using that technology and that information to improve our proposal accuracy, right? Not only with our proposal actual techs and people who are creating the proposal, but also pushing the technology of the different proposal platforms, right? Hey, did you know that we've rendered a 3D model of the home, and really your platform is saying that X should happen when in fact Y should, right? So really continuing to collaborate with the technology platforms across the industry to level up really accuracy across all measures and really across all different platforms. So we've been using Scanifly to spearhead that. I think the one thing that I'm encouraged by, the Scanifly team is their continued effort on how they want to, increase their offering, better their platform, right? And some of that, is also attributed to kind of Michael and the team, but now using thermal imagery, right? Like, how do you leverage the thermal technology to look for potential roof damage, roof leaks, things of that nature, all exist kind of within the Scanifly platform. So we're leveraging and using that continuously as well. And then how do we integrate the technology that Scanifly has into the financing platform, right? So, been working and having a lot of feedback there, and how do we utilize that in the different quoting platforms that are now being required or being used by the different financing arms, right? And so I'm excited. I think lastly, Scanifly continues to be a very receptive partner in feedback, right? You can have a conversation today, and there's a roadmap that, a week or two later about what potentially they can do to improve their technology and answer kind of the call. So one of the things that I would implore all people, sales or operations, is if you see a gap, if you see an opportunity for improvement, get in communication with Scanifly. And my experience thus far is they will feverishly work and quickly work to basically either resolve or improve the technology to address the concern that you have, right? And so I've been pleasantly surprised with kind of that, and to me, that's a partnership that I want to continue to involve myself and relate with. Sometimes there are technology platforms out there, both from a drone perspective or just proposal or just in general, that they stand on, I know better and I know what's best, and my technology is what is so. I would say that you're seeing some of those platform companies becoming obsolete. And I love the approach of Scanifly in that they are always open to hear kind of what could potentially make their platform better. And then not only do they hear that, but they actually implement that to answer kind of your concern. So yeah, I think I'm excited about Scanifly, and I think what they've done up to this point. And I think that as they continue to expand into different platforms outside of just, hey, design technology, proposal technology, I think that the industry as a whole will level up either through that information or as a requirement in order to compete with Scanifly. And so for that, I'm excited about just being accurate in general and the drive to provide kind of an outstanding service.
Chris, I really appreciate
Yeah.
your comments. We had a very similar experience with Scanifly. We were using a competitor of theirs, and when we first got into drones, we were skeptical, and we double checked the accuracy and found it to be something that was really compelling. But our move to Scanify really came from what you said, just their want to do better, their want to develop a partnership. There's been numerous changes that we've asked for and feedback that we've given that they take to heart and implement, which is, it's one thing to take the feedback, but to actually implement those changes is something that's great to see. So can't say enough about the Scanify team. They've really helped us improve our process, and they're always willing to listen, which is not something that you always get.
No, I agree on that. I think just having those different companies that you work for, that they want your feedback. They want to listen, and it's the implementation part that's key to show that they are going to be that true partner that really makes groups like Scanifly stand out. Dylan, we actually did have one question come in for you, where you had mentioned increasing from 15 PV plan sets to 30. How many PV designers do you have working right now? And then how many PV plan sets average design to complete pre-Scanifly versus post-Scanifly?
I believe we have 5 on the plan team. I'm not part of the engineering department anymore. I was up until about 2 months ago. So we have, I'm trying to think, I know we have a revisions team. I don't know if there's only 1 or 2 on the revision side. And then if we don't have plans, the planning team helps with revisions. And I believe we have 4 or 5 on the planning side. I'd have to double check. I'd have to look at our org chart to double check. Beforehand, there was a couple changes that happened kind of simultaneously besides just the Scanifly was kind of 2 things at once. But I would say before that, I know it was taking a couple hours in some cases. We put like APN numbers and a lot of other information on our plans depending upon what market we're in order to speed the permitting process. And when Illinois and in Pennsylvania can be 2 of very difficult markets to say the least. Pennsylvania, with a lot of our AHJs, they don't even allow you to use a portal. You have to physically mail the permit to the customer, and the customer has to take it in, like, to get a permit. It's insane. So there's a lot of extra information that we put on there. So some of those markets, it was taking almost 2 to 3 hours to do a set of plans. So I'd have to really dive in. I just know our average was like 35 minutes or 15 plan sets to 35 plan sets. I remember that distinctly, those 2 numbers. Sorry, I would have to go in and actually pull some more data, but I would be willing to do that if we had more time and different time.
Yeah, Nicole, I can kind of weigh in from our perspective, right? I would say if we were just doing apples to apples, PV to PV, I would say that at least our company's been able to increase by about 60 to 70% pre-Scanifly versus post-Scanifly. I would say that, in looking at it, right, that I'd say the biggest kind of win out of it is also just the factor that doesn't exist, which is the accuracy, right? So how many times am I actually having to do this design is also another cost factor. So it's not only the front end increase in production, but it's also how many times am I going to have to revisit that plan set? And we've actually seen that our accuracy rate has gone up by about 15% just out of the gate, which reduced kind of the revision or the rework, right? So I would say not only are you going to see a return on the front end about just increased production, but you're also going to see an accuracy increase, which will reduce kind of your rejection rate at the township, drive down your installation time frame. but it's also going to drive down your cost of your overall design team, or potentially the need for as many people, because you're not going to have to be doing things 2 and 3 times, potentially revisiting, oh, well, man, my site assessor told me this, and oh shoot, let me go back out there, or hey, I'm actually going to have to manually input and create this DXF file from scratch when this 3D model has already done that, right? So I think it's a multi kind of prong win that allows you to kind of reap the benefits of Scanifly.
Yeah, I guess what I could touch on, you just refresh some memories of what we were dealing with, was when you're drawing out that, manually drawing out a layout of your vent pipes or whatever that may be. And if your site survey tech just happened to put the measurement going the wrong direction or something, you know, that was something that really was a pain in the beginning, and the drone using Scanifly eliminated that. Like, we don't have obstructions measured the wrong, you know, north versus south, east versus west. So definitely I only see that one time. I'll definitely agree with you on that one, Chris. That helps.
Yeah, just to
Yeah.
kind of follow up on those comments, we've seen it's very rare that we revise the plan set after install based on something not being there that we weren't aware about. When I was installing, you know, you almost get used to crumpling up the plan set and, you know, kind of throwing it in the trash because there's vent pipes there, there's trees here, there's things kind of in the way. And using Scanify, it's very rare that we're having our guys having to make adjustments day of installation because the array doesn't fit or we're unaware of an obstruction.
No, and I think that's all huge, and I think it all kind of falls into play with these little changes can affect reps commission. So it just goes into show that using that correct technology and making sure that you're really aligned with that like-minded installer that has that quality, it is also going to protect your commission and make sure that you're not having to really run into any of those changes that can affect that. But that closed out our webinar today. For any of the panelists that you wish to connect with, we'll send out a follow-up email, and then you could always go on to Scanifly's LinkedIn and you'll see a link to all of our different profiles. But we thank everybody for joining today, and then all of our panelists as well.